Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar this afternoon. Just wanted to take some of your time to go through some of the latest updates that's happened around 3CX, because I know there's been quite a few recently. So we just want to kind of get your feedback, go through the changes and just make sure there's no confusion, really. So going to keep it as brief as I can. And of course, we're going to make some time for the question and answer section at the end. So let's go ahead. So on the call today, there's myself, Jason. I'm one of the sales guys here at ProView. I've also got Craig on the call as well.
Hello, I'm the sales director of ProView Communications.
Cool. I've also got Paul Clark as well, although I'm not sure if he's
Paul's stuck on mute at the moment, I think. So, but yeah, Paul Clark he's a senior channel manager of 3CX. So hopefully we'll get Paul talking a little bit later.
Cool. All good. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to look at the changes to the licensing, because there's been a few changes. This is probably the main section, really. Also some changes on the hosting. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and of course pricing. And then at the end we'll have a question and answer section, so we can get your feedback and get your questions, really. So send us your questions. There should be a little chat box on your right hand side. You might have already found it. Get your questions sent in, or just feedback in general, just so we can take that back to 3CX and kind of get your opinions, really. So this is your opportunity, really, to get your questions in.
And I must say, I would really encourage you to send questions in. So this is probably one of the largest both strategic and commercial changes within 3CX for quite some time. Everything before this was very much around trying to support during COVID, and therefore everything became cheaper or free. And now what's happening, there's obviously a massive strategic change, as well as commercial changes that might not necessarily be positive from a point of view that it's no longer free to you or hosted for free, etc., etc. And the other thing we really want to hear from you guys is kind of any feedback. So what we're going to use this for is hopefully to satisfy you guys that any questions that you've got, or what concerns you may have, or even opportunities that you may have with 3CX. We're hoping that today we can answer some of those questions and get back to you to either put your mind at rest or realize some opportunities that you might have seen. But also we're going to take away the questions we can't answer, and also any feedback, and feed that direct into 3CX. So obviously Paul's on the webinar as well, which is great. Have a member of 3CX with us, but that will still go back into 3CX, and therefore your feedback may have some impact on the direction that 3CX changes go on forward. Who knows? But feedback's important. So please do submit those questions.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll get into the first sort of major change in terms of the licensing. So standard licensing, it's no longer available for the annual version or perpetual. Perpetual has been gone for some time now. Perpetual licensing, you have been able to purchase the enterprise, up until now, the enterprise 32 and above, but that's also gone, now entirely. So it's just going to be the annual model that's going to be available. You can still trade in your perpetual licenses. So if you have let's say a professional 16 perpetual license, you can trade that in to an annual version, and get 365 days for free, really. So, and it's kind of a no-brainer at the moment, because the pricing is actually the same for both annual and perpetual model now. So I'd still do that while you can. Upgrades are still available for annual. What I mean by that really is, if you have an annual 16 key, you can still upgrade that to professional or an enterprise. You can't upgrade, unfortunately, to a standard 16 to a standard 32. That's no longer available to do. You can still renew these, however. So license changes, sort of the questions we've had from partners recently. So
sorry, it's my fault actually. I'm working at home and I had some noise in the background, so it kind of threw me off. I was actually telling people to be quiet, but live webinar is what you're going to do, right? So yeah, look, we've got some questions. So Jason, how long can I continue to renew my license for?
Sure. So at the moment, there isn't any planned date that these will be stopped. Both perpetual and annual versions. Whether that does happen in sometime down the line is a possibility, but at the moment you can still renew, as and when you like.
Okay, and what would the alternative for me be for the standard license from a features perspective?
Sure. So ultimately, it is going to be now a professional license. So if you have a standard 16, and you do need some, or if you were going to typically go for a standard 16, you'd want to go for a standard or a professional 16 now. There is also the Startup Pro, which will have similar features, but it's not going to be quite as extensive as the dedicated professional license.
Okay, and can I migrate from a standard to Startup Pro?
Currently, no, but this is on the roadmap, so it should be coming down the line at some point.
Okay. Are there any costs involved in migrating from a standard license?
Sure. So this will depend really where you're going to go from. So if you go from a standard to a professional, yes, there is. So that's not really changed though. So it's going to be prorated depending on how many days maintenance you've got left, and the cost is just going to be basically the difference. You will, as I said, at some point be able to migrate from standard to Startup Pro, but there's no sort of pricing on that at the moment because it's still yet to come.
Okay.
So hosting changes. Let's have a look at these. So currently it's now available for free for 2 months rather than the 12. So the 12 did come into play around about sort of COVID time, just to help partners out really and help customers out that were struggling. So this is, it's been changed down to 2 months. You still got that for free, so you can still get them set up, and then you can purchase the the additional months that you need. Existing hosted customers will continue to enjoy their service. So basically you're just going to be able to get, if you've already got 12 months, you picked that up before it was changed, you're still going to have, I mean, it might not be 12 months now, it might be 10 or 11. You're still going to, have that for the remainder of that period. And there's been some changes with the hosted margins as well. So typically it was 10% across the board for all partners. That's now changed a little bit. So for affiliates, it's 10%. So that hasn't changed. But for bronze partners, it's gone up to 15. And for silver and above, it's now 20. So quite, double the increase if you're a silver or above partner. So there's definitely more margin to be made there.
So after 2 months trial, will I need to pay for 10 months or renew it for another 12?
Yeah, so this will depend really how you do it, but essentially you are going to be paying for the 10 months. Now you can wait until the last, week before you're on your 2 months trial before you then come to renew. But essentially it's always going to be linked up or prorated against the existing remaining days on your annual key. So if you purchase an annual key at the same time as hosting, it's probably just better to do it at the same time. You'll pay for the 10 months and then you have your 2 for free. So it just works out the difference basically.
Okay. And does the dedicated instance give me access to failover, high availability?
Yes. So this is still the same. I mean, the dedicated is essentially, it's kind of had a bit of a name change really. So the annual professional and enterprise licenses are now the dedicated professional enterprise. So as long as you have an enterprise license, so dedicated enterprise, you'll still be able to have your failover.
Okay. And I take it obviously with the Startup Pro, I've heard that I can't put phones in it, but I can still use my IP phones with 3CX's hosted PBX?
Yes, exactly. So that's not really changed. So you can still put your phones on, your Snapmobile, your Yearling, for example. Should all work without a problem. Cool. So pricing changes. I'm assuming most of you guys are already aware of the increases that's been implemented. So that was around the 10th of August or so. Has been a slight increase. Now this is mainly in kind of a removal of a promotion that happened at the back end, or in fact, it was probably middle of last year. So where there was a reduction in price, again, to help out, partners and more end users really in kind of the times, COVID and whatnot. A lot of businesses were struggling. So that was put in place, but it's been kept quite a bit longer than I think at the first it was till the end of the year. But as I said, I mean, it's now a bit further on than that, but that's kind of been reverted and there's been a small increase on top of that as well. So that's kind of it for the changes. I did say I was going to keep it fairly brief. And now I guess it's over to you guys really, and see if there's any questions come in, any feedback really at all from you guys really.
Right, I've got Paul. Not well. I'm trying to unmute Paul. So it says he's self-muted at the moment. Paul, are you able to have a look at yours? Right, we're not getting Paul. We're not getting Paul.
No,
Jason,
you're back. I am
you're
back.
Hello, Paul.
But
sorry about that.
Sterling job, guys, and my apologies for the technical issues. I am inept.
Good.
Like I'm telling you things you don't know.
Right, Jason, have you got any questions there?
So there is one here. When is the Startup and Startup Pro available to purchase?
Okay. The startup, well, you can still use or you can download them now. They go live officially September. Now, whether that's sort of early September, late September, no ideas. Good news, however, is that your partner margins, so whatever level you've got as a 3CX partner, will also apply to your Startup Pro purchases. Bit of information hot off the press.
Perfect.
Paul, I've got one here. So with 3CX PBX hosted by 3CX, do you need an SBC?
Yes, is a short answer to that. Well, yes. I'm going to stick with our supported protocols. Yes.
Okay. Jason, have you got anything else you've got there?
There is just one other on the startup licenses. So someone's wondering if that's just going to be directly for end users, or is that going to be something that a partner's going to offer?
Startup and Startup Pro will be available to partners through their partner portal at full release when it's fully launched. So either or.
Okay, perfect.
So I think from that, what I'm kind of getting is that from Startup and Startup Pro, obviously, if a tech startup did come along and wanted to purchase that directly, they could, or certainly startup, should I say, but it won't come with bells and whistles, and it will be free. And therefore, that kind of is almost like a feeder product to get them into the other parts of which they'd need to go for a reseller for. But
Correct.
the resellers could obviously drive that out in much the same way as they was doing the kind of free licenses at the moment, and kind of say, right, well, I'll get you on startup, and maybe I'll add in my own services onto that, perhaps like a maintenance contract or something like that. Again, so there's effectively zero cost apart from their time, and they're driving that in. I say zero cost, you still need SIP trunks and that, right?
Correct.
Perfect.
So
okay. I was just going to say, if anybody does have questions that come a bit later on, then by all means email into contact@proview.co.uk. Just to highlight that it's from 3CX webinar, and then what we will do is we'll get back to everybody with all of the answers that we then, or all of the answers and all of the questions that come about.
Perfect.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think that's us. It's probably the shortest webinar that we've ever done.
Jason, Craig, thank you very much indeed, guys. A splendid job.
No worries. We'll download this, record it, and then we'll just put it on kind of some channels and post it out so that anybody else can kind of listen to it afterwards. There's not, as I say, there's not loads in there, but there was quite a lot of people that was messaging us initially, just kind of saying, well, what does this mean? What does it mean? So hopefully we've kind of answered the pieces that they were stuck on. And equally, as I say, it may generate more feedback, more questions, and as I say, we'll get back to everybody on here and anybody else that kind of looks at it a bit later on. So thank you everyone for attending. Jason, thank you very much. Paul, thanks for taking time out.
Hey, you're welcome, guys. Thank you for your efforts.
And we'll see you guys all soon, I hope. Take care.
That's good. Cheers, guys. See you later.
All right. Thanks a lot.